the one that is not built enough as a consciousness, and as actual institution of order, cannot exactly be arbitrage on civilized living. And that is going to be downfall of Serbia. Downfall of Serbia is that it connects with Asiatic societies, and Asiatic societies, although might claim certain developments and even civilizations or cultural developments, still exist from perspective where we are today, and that what means today is also now relative, but where we are as a mainstream civilizational protocol, they always appear as more prime, either where in question women's rights, where in question human rights, in order the social order itself, the way how they organize their societies. It is much more patronizing, much more firmly hierarchical, and very often discriminational. It is very often very hegemonic. Such a nature would never understand some a more hippie kind of nature. I have been my entire life criticizing hippie approach because they have become such losers in last century. But in substance, I am very much inclined to that side of the equation, my mother's side, because there is in all of that abstractness of detaching from firm hierarchical or military organization. There is that kind of civilizational indulgence to some kind of light disorder, which is not exactly disorder, but is more like something as a mental freedom or as a sense of being unconventional by deriving from conventional, that is deriving of its own kingdom with its perfect order, and then allowing to be unconventional by being strictly conventional and having properly organized society. But I like that sense that we have in within Macedonian / Democratic Party, that sense of liberation, of liberty, sense of liberty, sense of freedom, also while in the same time being accomplished, while in the same time being developed, while in the same time reaching these civilizational heights. That is how Macedonia and Serbia, in substance, when I look at my mother and father characters, that is how they would differ. And that is why my mother appears as more advanced protocol. And that is why in my work, still Macedonian Kingdom is a nomination account. And I will never make it otherwise. And it can never be otherwise. Because in substance, that is exactly how I feel about this entire matter. And that would be very similarly reflected in Democratic versus Republican Party. That is being backed by Irish / Celtic dominion, and that exists in complete opposition to Democratic Party, and it would appear as a stone hedge protocol as narrow-minded, oppressive, um, dictating, and regime makers in substance. They are the one that would be regime makers. And also you see here appears this level of what we discovered also, this creation of rotten children approach, which is having devastating effect on the other side. Now this is completely opposing from where I was bringing discussion yesterday. And here it is where searching for answers, mother or father, I find, or I have to find myself as an answer. Because I somehow unite the both. I unite the source and I unite the what would follow. Well, in real life, the pyramids become detached from the backyards, from the Buckingham Palace, from the backyards. Um, Similarly, as that happened, for example, with America. In my case scenario, my character unites both events. And that is why it is in position to take from both events what I need to take and deliver my work accordingly. So my work is not turning back to any of the parties, but it is rather amending them for what is not good enough. In case of Macedonia, I have found that and no, you can't blame. It's very hard to blame people. Once you reach certain kind of development, it's very hard to blame people for indulging themselves in their own kingdom. Today it would be translating. It's very hard to criticize a civilization indulging itself in its own civilizational development as a matter of civilized lifestyle or modern lifestyle. It is very hard to criticize modern society for its modern lifestyle, one would say. Um, because it is what human is. Human just conquest territory that human accomplished. Whatever we have accomplished today, we consider ourselves as we have conquested the territory. It's our territory and we claim it as our territory. It's civilizational normative. And when you look back, as for example, territories as is Mesopotamia, as it is Afghanistan, and all these territories, you might provide all of the assistance needed, but you will never be in position to give them the throne because it will not make any sense. That is what this world should understand. Equally, when I'm in question from position of someone sitting in America, I certainly would appear as a raw versus what they have accomplished and where they are today. And although I bring all of these kind of scientific arguments or arguments of political science, the best I can accomplish here is that I gain better conditions, either for myself or for my kind, in much more specific terms. But neither I can ask, neither I can get some kind of magic stick that is going to magically all of a sudden transform territories from where I originate into some kind of developed civilizational centers. Because it takes what it takes for someone to become developed civilizational center. But I'm going to say the best what one can expect from these territories, which I cannot credit more than they would deserve to be credited. That is where my protocol X emerges again here. Is because they have become so blunt and so numb versus the previous versus our territories, and have accepted to develop this kind of criminal accepted the criminal approaches and criminal answers. So we talk still here about some kind of top of the hill civilizational development and then decline of that. And I'm going to notice that that is somewhere in Central Europe where you accomplish the top of the true civilizational development, and when then it starts to decline, and that declining mode would increasingly uh, allow more criminal to take more and more criminal to take place because of that drive to self-preserve and maintain once accomplished development, but not always in situation to keep up. And it takes usually one person or two to bring the magic, and if you don't have them at a point of time, you get into stagnation. You see how with my work I managed to completely stop the disaster. I managed to completely advise nations to keep up to their currency protocol without going to golden standard. I think what we accomplished, the most important event that we accomplished today is to make nations liberated from impression that they need to associate their currency to golden standard. In contrary, we established that the real value of a nation is its geographical location, its historic heritage, its accomplished development in all of the time, what that nation means in the world, capacity of that people of that nation, its capacity to deliver the high level of profile of human profiles of human subjects. As you know, it is absolutely absurd, for example, to associate the power of France with a capacity of France to excavate some stones from somewhere from Africa. That is nonsense. The value of Africa, of France, in its geographic location, and it's inherited from the previous time build up, which was all built because of talented people, above all talented people living on the territories that have been craft workers, that have been Europe. Out of that goes follows everything else, number one production unit, number one organizational orders, international orders, whatever. You go in details here. Also, it is European platform, but they don't need to go in Africa because of it. Most of the metals they're excavates from mountains of Europe. Europe is full of mountains. They don't need to step their foot for a bit in Africa. They just don't need Africa for any of it. Same England. Enormously rich historic heritage. Number one diplomatic center. I'm bringing entire work today in England. Well, because I find in England from Jane something in combination of Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, and Mary Olympia Themis of today. Because I find my studio reflected the most in there from A to Z. And I bring my constitutional worth in England. I'm not going to bring it in South African Republic. Because I'm not being born in South African Republic. And because I would never reflect what I reflect here. Entire Mediterranean European sensitivity. If I was born in South Africa. Would I ever reflect what I'm reflecting with my work? I wouldn't. So excuse me. But here the pearl from the shell is not from Africa. It is from Mediterranean Europe. Now let's notice these things. Let's notice what is the real weight of Europe. Today, the entire world still continues to circulate around Europe and to copy Europe. And they're not inventing something else. Look, entire China is just copying Europe. They're just literally copying Europe. Here in New Zealand, they're not inventing new ones. They're just copying the European. Same Australia. Same Australia. It's all Mediterranean. They're just copying it in New Zealand and Australia. Yes. We talk about trademarks. We talk about license that will need to be actually granted to these producers. They need to pay money for it because it's formula. They need to pay money to France. Otherwise, it's criminal. And then France, of course, would not need to go in Africa. Why they would go in Africa when the entire world is going to to give them license for their production formula? That stamp mark. It belongs to France. I'm sorry. You have to pay for it. And that is how the country lives. But that is the currency of France. That is the actual value for France. And that is why France does not need to go and excavate stones in Africa. In contrary, they need France because they need market where they are going to sell their stones. Africa need France, not France Africa. Because in order to sell their stones, they need France, mostly France, because France is number one high couture producer. And France is not going to be just number one producer of dresses if it is not of jewelry as well, because it goes one with another. So Africa depends on France in order to have a market, top market in fashion couture for selling of its diamonds. If Africa cannot sell its diamonds to France as number one high couture country of the world, the stones of Africa would be worthless. The stones, you can't eat them. You can't live out of them. These stones are worth nothing. They have relative value. Their value is relative to how someone is going to appreciate them in certain lifestyle. That is how they get appreciated. Or when you excavate them from earth, equally as a gold or any other metal, means absolutely nothing to a random human being, to the point that it cannot be eaten. If it cannot be eaten, does not have, or it cannot be used for clothing or for shelter, on first account, for a human, for native human, does have zero value. Something gets value relatively to actual application in certain specific circumstances. Now that is second-hand value, that is relative value, and that is usable value, one would say, usable value, which means that it's going to be valuable as much as someone is going to value it. So let's not talk about humans here. Let's focus on pure economy. Let's think about actual economy so we actually solve one by one problem. Let's learn how not to always think in double meaning. Now we speak economy, we speak currency. Let's full-mindedly focus on the subject actually we are discussing. We are discussing economy. But this is critical momentum here. It's critical momentum where you have to understand how much uncomparable is any country of Europe with any other country in the world when it comes to values. Because the European countries are the real actual craftsmen of value. While in any other territories you have much more prevalence of raw material. So now we can speak about something being raw or diva before you get to divota. I am fashion designer. I am designer. I am designer in multidimensional ways. I cannot be referred as divota. Now, it might be that someone was using divota in some different reference. Maybe in relation to organic beauty of some kind of race of humanity. Some beautiful, when you find some specimen, some beautiful specimen somewhere in Africa, or somewhere in Afghanistan, or somewhere in Middle East, in all of that wilderness, and you find perfect beauty, then you will say divota. Divota. Because it is wild in the same time, but also beautiful. But you can't say it to someone in reference to someone as myself and go out and stone me. Well, actually, the wild one is yourself. Now, that is what you should be thinking as of today. Two more subjects for today before we agree. Therefore, today it is not Serbia or Macedonia. It is X-breed. I just have proven my X theory again here. Let's also, there's another subject someone throwing me here, orphanage. Well, again, this is perceived from outsiders, how they would like to play the ancient ball of ancient kingdom versus the actual imperial families that actually exist as actual imperial families, where kids are actually born out of actual regular uh, children making process that is out of womb of a mother. You cannot call a person orphan if it is actually born from their mothers and made out of their fathers. How on earth you can call that orphan? Why would you call that orphan? Or maybe because we talk about some kind of genetic intervention, additional, because it was after Maria Curie in last century, the science went into laboratories. It was possible to do some kind of alternation to embryos, but that's not going to make a child orphan just because there is some kind of additional inserted some kind of additional genome of additional values, or as they're saying, actually, the way how human body reacts within this kind of being that kind of energetic phenomenon, actually very much metaphysical. It is also very much a matter of mind of a woman and mind of a father as a spiritual being and as energetic beings, and how they energetically recalibrate in a given time that will affect giving birth to a baby. That is, I'm going to find that is the most correct answer. the baby born in a given time would be recalibrating certain energetic conditioning that will be orbiting around the parents in completely pure way, as a mental event, and still can be reflected within the energetic creation of a child. We should be ready for such kind of explanation, but I'm not going to accept someone to call me an orphan when properly born in a family, and when I look like my parents equally. I completely resemble their character. I really can't understand what these people are trying to do here. But I'm going to say here, the human differ from animals by walking on two legs, which is not easy for any of the animals, to be frankly honest. It takes as much as genetic material as it takes to bring a being to look like a human. So we can comfortably say, if someone looks like a human, then that is a human because it takes that much of a genetic material to make that human. That means that is for sure and certainly human. That means that anyone to treat a human, a normally present human, as not a human, as committing a crime and should be punished and charged as for a crime. That is how we are going to conclude with this 10 years of discussion. Exactly at that point. And don't you dare anymore to refer to imperial families as an orphanage. That is also going to be punishable. Not recognizing real history, it is going to be from now on punishable. Manipulating history to such core level, it is to be punishable. And to Ireland, that is trying to cash out in all of the historic times of whatever is going to happen on our territories. There is something that Ireland will never manage to defeat, and that is the fact that they have plugged for 2 millenniums times in most ancient, most developed ancient kingdom of the times, and after their arrival on the territory, that kingdom stopped existing. That we are talking about actual ancient Macedonian kingdom. Ireland will never get out of that, of being accused of something like that. And another momentum as a message to Ireland, a part of the fact that I'm declaring the mixed breed, and that I would like to see you, on first instance, recognizing that particular event rather than jumping in your shoes and dealing with our matters, as it would certainly not be that much of a stretch for me to start interfering in your matters of how you relate versus England in all of the ancient times, which I have patiently allowing to settle in the incoming events, leaving enough space for communication on such matters. I would not like to see you jumping in my communication with Africa. Mediterranean communication with Africa is Mediterranean communication with Africa. How about you focus on the fact that America, that USA to present day is defined by wild cowboys? Well, speaking English from English-speaking territories derived completely all of the above. And the fact that you do not compare with, you would never compare with one of the most famous empires of all of the world, as it is Macedonian Empire. Appreciate someone's patience carefully. I have still given you a space for the future. And I would not like to see you taking that future from me, because that would be very much alike of what you have been doing your entire life. Getting under someone's skin and taking over the movement. It's not going to happen this time. Again, Ireland, hold on to your horses. That means your territory and your people born on your land. And be patient, because you still need someone to give you a hand. I wonder who that would be exactly. Ireland? You answer that question. Forget about Americans. Today they need to defend their wilderness, inclusive. And they're not going to make the first call to you anytime soon. That is Ireland defined today. Now let's speak Irish language carefully. And let's notice what is today favorite, the most famous Irish language recommended. Or what would be the most recommended or the most accepted voice from Ireland that we all hear? And what language from Ireland or interface from Ireland we would not like to hear exactly today on first instance, since we are talking about world-class revolution. Let's be wise, Ireland. You have brought Barack Obama on my back in America. You have large bill to pay Ireland to me and my lands. You have Ireland very large bill to pay, and I'm going to ask you to be very careful how you're going to play from now on your territory. I wanted to say something else. This conversation is what I have delivered on earth, and as long as you are not mentioning in what context you participate in the present political discussions, you will be charged with violation of authority rights and given permission to participate on this level of discussion. If it is happening under the roof of the subjects I have brought on a light day, you will be charged with violation of my authority rights, while in the same time you're holding me hostage still very much within your Irish-driven premises. And no, Macedonia, that's not going to be reason for me to return home. Few reasons. That never that much felt as my home. Second, you never related to me exactly as we are of the same kind. Third, you never knew, or you have not managed to develop so far, which is a bit laughable, how to relate to people of my kind, which is imperial stamp first degree. Point 4, I have today erected planetary list of subjects that are of such significance that I'm not going to allow someone to discuss me from some kind of local corners in some kind of pubs in somewhere in France, which without my work in 10 years will become another Republic to Africa Federation. And I'm going to ask Europe, for that matter, to get sober, as well as I have asked Ireland. That is in terms of to whom exactly you are talking and how you should be talking to someone as myself, or you may need to change your entire historic heritage, which, by the way, I have just said, is your survivor certification today. That is on what you today are going to introduce your entire currency, France. Are you really to get confused how you're going to talk about your historic heritage? This is unbelievable when people jump out there to react instinctively, as human is that much of a simple event, and as the times in which we are so simple, and the subject that we have today are so simple, so you can afford the reaction in a minute or in a second, just like that. Well, that is what I'm going to call prejudice. Maybe we can call it ballooning. That's very easily get into shape of donuts. And that's one of your famous delicatesses, by the way, France. We all have our weaknesses, and one of the virtues of any person, or a nation for that matter, is to learn about its own weaknesses. So be it. Learn about what was not good in your history and what today you will need to change. Well, there is no easy step towards a recovery, or should I say, reincarnating. If someone was thinking, someone was thinking that that's going to be that simple, you just hear it on local internet provider, and you just instantly recover your entire national identity. Well, I wouldn't say it is that easy to deal with your exactly with your historic heritage, because within the substance of your historic heritage, something there was not done properly. But you should not forget how you found yourself where I found you. Why is that important? Why is that important, France and the rest of the Europeans? Because if you don't learn how you have made that mistake, you might easily make it again. And there will be no next time for you, because the beasts today are much bigger. Being China, I'm sorry that I have to call you like that, but in many terms you behave exactly like that if we zoom into specifics. The beasts today that can easily turn to swallow you in a second of a time are China, India, and Africa, and yes, Mongolian Russia. And you, still sitting in your museum. Another momentum that caught my attention today, and that is what becomes now a problem when I issue certain statement, and then thousands of people try to catch for certain words and transform them into their own in meaning that they would prefer to be derived from text. That is, which just explains further how far delivering just text is not going to be enough of authoritative and enough of governmental, of governing. It will need to be much more present, actually, intervention direct on the ground. For first of all, for purpose of preventing someone to translate your words in the wrong way and create much higher damage than intended. The consequence of such acrobatics has been felt in entire last century, or I should say in few last centuries, where capital managed to play the ball to such an extent that we have lost the sense of what means real true leadership. I already talked about the entire event within the protocol Jesus bloodline, and this is again now being confirmed today when I say it takes one or two people to bring the magic, and they refer to my kids, which would be on position of apostles. But the fact is that my kids have not delivered this work. Now, this is important because I would not like someone to use them further on for for starting something different that would be more in going in direction of wrongdoing, and then they end up to be accused for it. I would not, in other words, I would not like to put on the shoulders of my kids, which are the next generation, have not been living on territories where I am born, neither in times where I have been living. And it would be just jumping over rather than walking as a humanity. I would find very unmoral that Western territories continue to prefer to take our kids as their bastards, to talk about them as their bastards and relate to them as their bastards, without recognizing that this work is work of mature person. And the second person I'm referring to is my father, because he, in one way or another, allowed me to get this stage from where I can talk to humanity today. So it took two people for this magic to happen on this earth today, and that is my father and myself. And see what happens when I don't say specifically what two characters would be bringing the magic. Look how instantly you translate that into wrong translation. Now, can you please project how that will escalate further as you continue to drive all over in the same way and on the same mistakes? And continue to believe that you are actually doing something that is of valid, not because someone is going to certify you or not, but because where that's going to lead you ultimately in all of the real terms, when then you need to turn your back and confront the rest of the world. That's not going to give you credit because you have been ballooning or you have been closing your eyes voluntarily, instead to confront reality how you should have and how you should as we speak. They will not be apologetic to you because of your mistake. With intensity, only a true monarch can wait upon your shoulders for another day. A heavy call, heavy event. Well, you should be worth your history. Another momentum, it will need to be recorded in this in closure of introductory, and that is the fact that today the main problem is not even war of Russia and Ukraine or Israel and Palestine. The main problem today is actually America. The heaviest problem is actually America. Starting from the fact that the White House of America is completely detached from any issue that is relative to actual situation in America. The fact is that the White House in America, the entire, that is rather Washington, the entire Senate and the entire government of America is completely detached from actual events and actual issues in their territory. They exist as parallel reality. That is major issue of America. The fact that also the various senators and various appointees out there in various the hierarchical order of various representatives out there are totally inadequately positioned to actually deal with the situation. They happen in that house, which is House of Representatives, and on the other side, what they are confronted with is simply nothingness. They're introducing the ground to whom exactly? Because in substance, you would be having the institution of constitutional concept of American entity in existence as existing American body, not as some kind of political party, but as actual state of America. And then, of course, the government, the Senate, and as representing the state of America, and representatives are confronting the state of America with their regular down-to-ground interests. We do not have here proper defense of concept of the institutional positions of America. Neither they have been properly declared, neither they have been properly defended. And what is on the other side in the House of Representatives is complete mess, because they do not exist as regulators to the ground, they represent as appointees of the ground. And that is where the entire concept of governance becomes questioned, as how on earth you can even talk about institution of governance where the ground is going to come in your house and to dictate you their conditions without you providing previous teaching in the way how I do here, so they can then start speaking after you explain to them how things are. But no house of ruling or house of leadership would allow ground to speak first, and they're like waiting there as Santa Clauses. As that is exactly how America exists today as we speak, and that is what is wrong in that institution. Now, I don't know who is more to be blamed here, either ground or the Santa Clauses, or both of the sides. That is why America to the present days, it is such a problem.